Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Clifford Lee Sargent. Great to see you as always. Hope you're doing well. Get that coffee. I'm going to keep the horror theme going for a little bit. I missed the deadline for Halloween, but, it's like the Ministry song goes, Halloween is every day. Bop, bop. Today is The White People by the Welsh author Arthur Machen, published in 1904. I love the title. The White People. It's scary. This is a kind of gift from my friend and patron Brian DeWan. Thanks a bunch, Brian. Really appreciate it. I plan to read the other stories in this collection as well, but I wanted to dedicate this review to this very famous tale of occult horror. A quick reminder, it takes a great deal of time to make these free videos, and if you appreciate them and would like to help sustain the show through what appears to be an emerging economic collapse, the link for my Patreon is below, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you very much to all my patrons. You're wonderful. As the introduction by S.T. Joshi informs us, the legendary horror author H.P. Lovecraft considered the best horror story ever written to be The Willows by Algernon Blackwood. Excellent story. I've reviewed it. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest you go check it out immediately. The second best for Lovecraft was The White People by Arthur Machen. That's a hell of an endorsement in the horror world. Arthur Machen was a Welsh author of horror and supernatural fiction, often involving the occult. He was briefly a member of the Golden Dawn along with W.B. Yeats and Aleister Crowley, and he later became a Roman Catholic. So, interesting trajectory. His admirers include Oscar Wilde, Stephen King, H.P. Lovecraft, Thomas Ligotti, W.B. Yeats, and the terrific English horror author Robert Aickman. Machen was tremendously influential. The real deal. And you can see why. He's smart as hell. I think you can see Machen's influence on Robert Aickman in the low-key nature of his horror writing. What Lovecraft describes regarding this story as Machen's restraint. Perfect word for it. Machen is very subtle. The White People begins with a man named Cotgrave listening to an older gentleman named Ambrose inform him of the true nature of sin and evil, and how many crimes involving human affairs are not indicative of real evil. Ambrose poetically describes true evil as, and I quote, the taking of heaven by storm. Recall Satan in Paradise Lost, no? He gives a couple historical examples of true evil. The infamous French serial killer Gilles de Rais, I'll let you look him up on your own, and Tophet, which is the name of the place where the Canaanites made their sacrifices to Moloch. Both of these are S-tier evil, right? What they have in common is true blasphemy in every way. Ambrose takes a book that he keeps in a sequestered place and tells Cotgrave to read it. It's the diary of a young girl, the story of her gradual initiation into a pagan cult by her nurse, who is essentially a witch. The White People is not an easy story. Machen suggests and insinuates more than he describes. He challenges the reader to dig deep. Apparently, he was once employed to catalog occult books, and his knowledge seems vast. I think he layered symbols in here, which at the moment, unfortunately, I'm unable to grasp. While it's a short story, it's quite expansive, as there are stories within the story within the story. As the narrative transitions from Cotgrave and Ambrose to the first-person account of the girl and her supernatural encounter with the White People, to her recalling stories from her nurse. It's deeply atmospheric. Because of the girl's detailed descriptions of the terrain, you have the feeling of going on a long journey. Machen's tale is flooded with old-world paganism. It's everywhere. The seemingly long-lost dark energies rising once again, right? Machen once wrote a poem on the Eleusinian mysteries, the pagan initiation rites. The Greek Eleusinians were the ones I was alluding to in my review of Dracula, the ones who worshipped the goddess Demeter. That was part of the initiation rites. The myth of the goddess Demeter and her daughter Persephone played a big part in the rites. Remember, the name of the ship that transported Dracula to England was the Demeter. Also, Bram Stoker had a friend who was in the Golden Dawn but was not a member himself. But he was certainly aware of it. So as you can see, so much of horror is inspired by the resurfacing, the threat of paganism. The motif continues to this day. In fact, one of my favorite films, The Wicker Man, the original one, 1973, is built around this theme. And again, as in Dracula, nature plays a role in the story. It's present in Dracula, but it's everywhere in The White People. The entire thing centers around a journey deep in the woods. Nature in The White People is a representation of this violent, ancient, unknowable, unstoppable, earthbound energy that is inherent in pagan religions. It doesn't die, it just changes form. The girl wanders through a vast, treacherous, bewildering forest landscape with strange rocks that remind one of the alien environment in Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu. Lovecraft was enamored with the idea of the old gods. It's no shock that he loved this story. There are clear similarities between the two stories. Both are stories within stories generated from obscure found documents of an eerie, accursed nature. Cursed found objects, right? This is a classic horror trope. It never fails to inspire dread. We can't get enough of it. There's something ancient and primally horrifying about the motif. You can see it in several other books I've reviewed. The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers, House of Leaves by Mark Danielewski, and The Witnesses Are Gone by Joel Lane. And there's also the motif of the cult, or hidden group, performing ancient or perhaps evil rites. You can see this motif not only in The White People, but also in, again, The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers, The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft, all the way up to the first season of True Detective and beyond, I'm sure. And then Ari Aster's Midsummer is essentially an homage to The Wicker Man, so there you go. This is an old and ancient motif, right? These horror themes are deeply entrenched in the human psyche. Things that reveal secrets we'd prefer to have never known. Corrosive objects that reveal knowledge of untold doom, right? But the compelling thing about Machen's story, as opposed to other horror stories, is that it's not visceral or grotesque or grandiose. It's actually very quiet, lightly fantastical, but deeply insidious. A very dark fairy tale. It's symbolic and suggestive. It does not give it to you straight. And you can kind of pick up on that when he references Gilles de Rais and Tophet, right? And it's like, those aren't just things you drop. Those are like the most evil things from history. There are only glimpses of the horror that's implied. Machen never reveals everything in the story, to a degree that would be frustrating if it weren't so intriguing. With the way he writes the girl's diary, he only gives you enough to want to keep going because you're constantly wondering, what is actually happening? What's going on here? What does she see? What is she talking about? What is happening to her? He's layered in just enough imagery between the girl's journey and the stories by her nurse that she recounts to keep us trapped in curiosity. Historically, women were largely the ones who kept the European pagan folk traditions alive, and we can see this in the story. The nurse who tells the girl's stories was herself told stories by her great-grandmother. Also a witch, so you can see it's traveling through the generations of witches. So ancient tales had traveled by tongue, folk tales, occult secrets. Things that only exist between individuals in fleeting gasps of breath. Machen's story asks, what if those stories turned out to be true? At first I was slightly underwhelmed by the ending. It was only after reflecting on the story's events that I was like, whoa, yeah, that was deeply strange. Machen really demonstrates that you can write an intellectual horror story. Horror does not have to appeal just to the base. It can be quite cerebral. And you come away with these wild images in your head. For example, the girl recounts a story of a lady who refused to choose a husband, and who was, unbeknownst to everyone else, a witch. And there's a scene where the lady goes picking flowers in the forest, and she can sing in this very special manner, right? And so she lays down in the forest, she's lying back, and she begins singing. And then you have one of the greatest scenes in horror literature, ever. Then the lady would lie down under the trees and begin to sing a particular song, and she stretched out her arms, and from every part of the wood great serpents would come, hissing and gliding in and out among the trees and shooting out their forked tongues as they crawled up to the lady. And they all came to her, and twisted round her body, and her arms, and her neck, till she was covered with writhing serpents, and there was only her head to be seen. And she whispered to them, and she sang to them, and they writhed round and round, faster and faster, till she told them to go. She's doing very interesting things with serpents. Yeah, that faster and faster line is kind of a suggestive. That is some wild shit. That is some wild shit. The story is worth it for that scene alone. I mean, what an image. The woman controls the serpents with her pagan singing. Marvelous. What do you think she does to her suitors? I found a pile of snake eggs recently. Black racer eggs, I think. They're perfectly round and kind of blue-white. Wonder if it's an omen. Now, I've spoiled enough about the story, but I thought the lady might be an allusion to Eve and the fall, or Lilith, Adam's first wife, who, in Jewish mythology, was kicked out of the garden and is associated with snakes. Check out the famous painting of her by John Collier. It's just entitled Lilith. Lilith is a symbol of rebellion and forbidden knowledge. Like the snake she's often seen with in paintings, who shares the same symbolic qualities. Like in Genesis, as well as Milton's Paradise Lost, wherein Satan takes the form of a snake. Ye shall not surely die. The original snake oil salesman. And this might have something to do with the white people that the girl sees when she's younger, although it's up for debate, as much of the story is. I thought the vision of the white people that the girl witnesses might have been Adam and Eve. The girl seems to be doing something akin to repeating the fall, the expulsion from the garden, by way of her initiation into this strange cult. And the fact that she's poisoned, as Machen writes it, by this occult force, this forbidden knowledge, possibly. Poisoned makes me think of a poison apple. The poison apple in the Garden of Eden, right? We don't really know what this poisoning means, nor do we really know how the girl ends up as she does. As I learned from a terrific analysis of the story by M. Grant Kellermayer, linked below, Lovecraft had his own interpretation of the story, which was like Rosemary's Baby, but then she literally poisons herself to avoid giving birth to God knows what. Now that seems very plausible, but Lovecraft implies that she did it out of horror and despair. But a more disturbing interpretation came to me. She literally poisoned herself, yes, but what if she wanted to? For the god. What if that was somehow part of the ecstatic ritual of the pagan god she's worshipping? Some kind of self-sacrifice to the forest idol? That's an infinitely more frightening scenario. It's one thing to be invaded by a demon exorcist style. It's a whole other to will that invasion. Disturbing. I can't help but think of the modern day incidents of AI psychosis that result in the young people taking their own lives so that they can be together or something. We worship digital idols. Was Machen trying to warn us? Did he already know something that we don't? Maybe. Better Than Food. 4 out of 5 coffees. A terrific, uncanny, haunting tale. The more I reread it, the more I admire its sophistication. So what did I dislike? Machen is constantly putting off the discovery the girl makes in the woods, and it becomes a device to build dread and suspense. And while it was interesting to see how he was doing it, inserting stories here and there, after a while I was like, all right, get on with it, pick it up, come on, let's go. Because we keep going through the terrain over and over again, like, just in case you forgot. To be fair, after you read the story, you feel like you could draw the map, right? Which is curious. But yeah, the descriptions of the terrain often felt excessive. But that's likely my impatience as a modern reader. The real creepiness of the story is within the final moments and the revelation of who Ambrose, the book owner, really is, and his involvement with the book. And it definitely leaves you with this unsettling feeling of, this is so far from over. And I think that's precisely the feeling Machen wanted to impart on us. And he does. So who should read it? If you enjoy H.P. Lovecraft, Thomas Ligotti, Edgar Allan Poe, Stephen King, and Robert Aikman, check it out. If you like horror fiction, period, read it. It'll take you an hour to read and you'll have experienced one of the most respected short stories in horror literature. Well worth your time. If you enjoyed this and would like to support the show, then my Patreon is linked below. Thanks a bunch. Benefits include Patron-Only Reviews, video calls, Patron-Only AMAs, and more. And thank you very much to all my patrons for helping me keep this show going. I sincerely appreciate it. I could not do this without you. Thank you. And that's all I got. Please subscribe if you have not already and hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and always remember, die reading. Alright. Great to see you as always. Hope you had a nice Halloween. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Ciao!